Hello crafty friends and welcome back to my channel and my YouTube live, and thank you for being here. We will be creating two cards using embossing folders today, and well, just this one embossing folder, and I am going to show you my absolute favorite techniques when it comes to 3D embossing folders, and especially with these beautiful images like these. Now, I'm sorry I missed last Sunday's class or last Sunday's live, but I'm so glad you guys were here today, and let's get started. So this is the new Brightest Bloom embossing folder. This was part of the August card kit by Simon. So they made to Flourish card kit. So this was the card kit. It had some fun stamps and dies and this beautiful embossing folder, wonderful ephemera pieces. And this was the stamp set that was included in that kit. I do have one of my live videos, I think the week before that, where I used this stamp and created a fun video. And we will be using the sentiment from here today, but well, this is a stamp set, and the fun part about that kit was it came with coordinating dies. So here are all the dies that it came with, and I absolutely love the sentiment on this one. So let's just take a look at what we are going to create today, and we will be actually creating two cards. And again, like I mentioned, I have two of my favorite techniques. One is the blackout technique, and another one is just ink blending with some beautiful colors. So let's get started. I have a panel that measures 4 by 5¼ inches. Now we will be embossing this first. Now, I'm not using a heavyweight cardstock here. I'm just, we'll dive right into it. So uh, here, I'm not using a heavyweight cardstock. This is a normal 80-pound cardstock. And usually, if I'm using a heavyweight cardstock, I will spray it with some water. But in this one, I don't think I need water because it's not going to crack. It's not a heavyweight cardstock. So what I'm going to do is that now, if you guys are new to embossing folders, this is a 3D embossing folder by Simon System. It's pretty thick, and 3D embossing folder gives a beautiful crisp impression of this any texture that it has. Now you'll see there is a raised side on the embossing folder, and this one is like a well. So we have two sides. So depending on the side you want to feature on your card front, that's where you keep the cardstock. So today we are actually going to use both the embossed and the debossed side. So I'll show you the difference once I emboss this panel. So what I like to do is, now this is the raised area. Now these are the wells here. This is the raised portion. Usually I keep my panel on the raised portion. That way I kind of get a better control. And then I will just close it. And once I close it, I'll just make sure I have the image where I want it to. So now here, I just need more of that flower. So I will align my panel accordingly. And this panel is 4 by 5¼ inches, which is slightly smaller than your standard A2 size card base. So the sandwiches that I use to emboss, now this is my usual die cutting platform that I have. So I have the A plate, which is the thicker plate. Then I use the platform number B, which is this thin platform. And then I have two cutting plates. So this is how I use it for regular die cutting. Now for these 3D embossing folders, what I like to do is, now every plate, every machine, the pressure will vary. So this is after a lot of trial and error. Now here on the, there are guides given, but for me, this kind of does not work. It says you need an adapter plate, the base platform, and then you can sandwich your embossing folder with that. But then I don't prefer using this same setup. What I do is, now for example, if I have this panel, I'll just fold this. Any printer paper would work for this. What I do is I just keep it here. I then place my embossing folder and the paper sandwich. I'll just, never keep your die or your embossing folder just parallel to the edges of your embossing plate. Just make sure you tilt it, and then I will use this thin plate. I'm not using the adapter plate here. So I will run this through my die cutting machine. Okay, there we go. So here I have that beautiful etched detail. If you see the panel, the raised edges are absolutely gorgeous on this one. And so this is the embossed side. So you can use it either on the side, or if you turn it around, these are the wells. So this is the debossed side. So you could use either side of this embossed panel to create a beautiful card front. So for our cards today, I'll be showing you both the options. First, using the embossed side, which is what generally people use. And the other one is using the deboss side, which is where my absolute favorite technique comes into picture, which is the blackout technique. So first we will do the regular ink blending, and I'll show you how beautiful that turns out. So ink blending, what I plan on doing is usually whenever I get an embossing folder with a floral image like this, I just end up using two beautiful color combinations and just add that beautiful color around my design. I'm not going to color in this particular flower image, but I'm just going to add ink blending all over the panel. So that way we can have a beautiful ombre effect on our panel. Or you could just stick to one color combination, or you could, like, have multiple colors, create a rainbow background. Now for our card today, I think, go for some pinks and purples for both the cards. So let's bring in some beautiful pinks and beautiful purples. Now I am going to start with guava and carnation for my pinks, and I will have orchid and lilac for the purples. And then if I think I need more colors, I will bring in the darker tones. So now before I ink blend, I also want a stamped sentiment. Now usually such cards where I have a lot of ink blending, I keep my sentiments pretty simple. So instead of adding a die cut sentiment, I generally prefer stamping my sentiment. So I will create a birthday card. So both of these will be birthday cards, and I will be stamping my happy birthday sentiment from the Made to Flourish stamp set. So I like to do this before the ink blending because we will be adding embossing powder to the sentiment, and it will be more like an embossed resist technique. So all that stamped sentiment, it will resist any of the ink. So you don't have to worry about, the sentiment being smudged or any of that. So, okay. So let's just prep this panel, and then we can add our sentiment to this one. So I will bring my stamp wheel, and I will place this in one corner. And then I will go ahead and stamp my sentiment, which says happy birthday. I usually tend to create more of happy birthday cards or cards with like generic sentiments like wishing you a beautiful day, or anything of that. So if it's a wishing you a beautiful day, that would be happy birthday, or even thank you cards. Those would be perfect for sending love, those kind of cards as well. So let's get this. Hi Papa, hi Mommy. Thanks for joining. So now this sentiment here, it's not absolutely straight. So you may use an alignment guide, but you generally don't need it. But then I will use my grid transparency sheet because it's also acid and looks like probably I must have not cleaned this last time. So I don't want any stray black marks on my panel. So I'll just place this here and make sure it's kind of centered, or placed in between the leaf and the flower there. So I'll try to align it as much as I can, and then we can stamp it using a pigment ink. Okay. I don't want my sentiment to overlap the embossed areas. Now, of course, this particular folder has a lot of flat area around the embossed flower, but if you're using like a completely embossed background, which does not have any flat surface, that's when I would usually use a sentiment strip. Now, for panels like this, where I have a lot of gap, I generally tend to use the sentiment directly. So there, that fits perfectly. Now, before adding in my sentiment, I'll just use my anti-static powder and make sure the powder will stick only to the um, stamped area and not anywhere else, because we are ink blending. We'll be ink blending this panel, so I don't want any of that embossing powder stuck anywhere other than the stamp sentiment, because obviously we are doing the embossed resist. So if there's powder anywhere else, that will resist the embossing, the inking, and it might not look as beautiful as intended. So, okay. So I'm using the uh, Nocturne pigment ink. Now, if you don't like using embossing powder over your sentiments, I would say skip this step, that is stamping your sentiment, to the very end, because you don't want to smudge any of that. Now, since we will be using an embossing powder and heat setting it, it is pretty much safe there. So it won't move around. The ink won't smudge. And there. So I will go ahead and pick this up. Mm, So what I'm going to do is I will just add some clear embossing powder over this. Now, if you've been watching my videos, you know how much I love stamping either my sentiments or even my uh, focal point images with pigment ink and then adding embossing powder rather than using just a matte sentiment or a matte image. I prefer that shine and gloss. So I usually do that even with my watercolor panels as well. Okay. So let me bring in my heat tool. I'll make sure it's really nice and hot before I bring it to the sentiment. While my heat gun is heating up, I'll just clear the area and make sure everything is in place. All right. Now, how I like to use this is I keep something flat, and then first I will apply heat from the back, and then I will turn it around and I'll keep my heat gun moving so that it's not focused on one place. That will prevent warping of the paper. So there we go. And that's it. Now, before bringing in my inks, I'll just make sure this has some time to cool down and that melted powder would not smudge if I add too much ink. So let's just do that. So there are a few colors that I absolutely love when it comes to ink blending two colors. One of them, the color combination is pinks and purples. Then, well, pinks and oranges are again my absolute favorite. Then another combination that I like using is teal and green. That is something that I recently discovered and I'm really so happy about that. Then I also like using teals with yellows. So those are some color combinations that I really like using. For today's card, I will stick to these color combinations. So now let's start with carnation. I'm using my glass surface. If you do not have a glass surface or a slick surface, what you can do is place this onto a printer paper and pull out the ink. I usually don't prefer doing ink blending while placing my panel on an ultra sticky mat or something like this. I don't like doing that. That's because sometimes what happens is when you go to drag your brush, it might get stuck to the ultra sticky mat, and then when you pull it towards the panel, you get those little streaks of color. So I don't generally prefer doing that. So I like to directly use my mat or my craft surface to add that color. Okay, so let's start with our pinks. So I'm using the Simon's blending brush, and we will try to do like a half and half. So we'll have pink here and purple here. So this is a very straightforward technique, and this is one that you can create. This card particular design is something that you can create in all the color combinations that I just mentioned, or you could even create an ombre look. So that is like a very easy technique. You can just go ahead and create a bunch of these panels all at once, and then use the same exact techniques in different colors and create maybe a set of birthday cards. There. I first like to come through the edges and then just build in the color towards the center as we go. So I'm just filling in the edges here. And make sure I will have a little bit of white space in there, not crisp white, but the lightest of that pink. So whatever pink is remaining on my blending brush, that'll be on the center. So that's pretty much it with the pinks. If you want, with this shade, which is carnation. And then if I want, I can just bring in more of that carnation. Next, I'm going in with guava. Which is slightly darker than this pink. Just bring in my other blending brush. Let's just okay. And this time, I'm just going to stick to the very edges. I'm not even going to bring it closer to the sentiment. So we need that little bit of that darker on the edges. And as we move towards the center, we have the lighter pink. That's it. Okay. Next, I will bring in my purple, which is the first shade is lilac. I will definitely clean my surface because I don't want to contaminate my purple ink blending brush with the pinks. So there we have, the first one is lilac. I'll do the same exact thing, bring in the color down this time. I'll just pick some of that lilac and try to create a seamless blend where this transition happens. I'm not going to add any purple here. So I have my center, which is almost white. It's not crisp white, but well, almost white. I'm doing the same exact thing. I'll start with the edges. I'll add color there. And then slowly pull in the color inside. There we go. That was my first color, lilac. You see there's a slight bit of that white there. I am absolutely fine with that. Okay. Once we are done with lilac, I'll bring in the next shade, which is orchid. Pick that up and just on the edges. Just a little bit, a tad little bit of color. That's it. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is try to create a little bit of blend here. I don't want that stark white. So whatever color is left on my blending brush, I'm going to very lightly just blend it around there. Just to remove that stark white. And again, I'll bring my pink and just add that little bit of color there. Just like that. So there's not a lot of white seen, but I still get that beautiful transition. Maybe a little darker on this side. That's pretty much card number 1. Isn't that really quick? So you could do this in a variety of different colors. One of my other favorite color combination is orange and pink, which I think would look absolutely stunning on this. Okay. So I will keep these aside and just clear my work surface again. Now I will add some splatter to this. Splatter or some shine to this. So before I move on to card number 2, let's just finish this up. So I will bring this down in my splatter box and let's add some shimmer. So I'm using my shimmer spray. So what I do is I will just give it a nice shake and spray that. You could also add splatters here, but I just prefer using the shimmer spray. Just a couple of pumps here and there. And that's it. There you go. Not sure if it shows here on camera, but it looks absolutely stunning. And I really like that bright black pop. So we will leave this as is and let it dry first before I can go ahead and put it on a card base. Till then, we'll work on our second card. So I have another panel here. It's the same flower that I embossed. And thank you so much. I love the shimmer too. And if not splatters, shimmer is something that I absolutely love using on my cards. And so this is one of my favorite sparkle shimmers. This is from Amazon, I guess. Another one that I like to use is by Altnew. So, yep, this one. So this is the iridescent shimmery ink spray. I like using this one as well. But sometimes I feel this one tends to get a little overwhelming on my card, and this one gives a light subtle shimmer, so I prefer using this especially when I'm creating clean and simple cards like the one I just showed you guys. Now the next one is my absolute favorite technique anytime it comes with working with embossing folders, and that is the blackout technique. So there are two ways to do that. One is using ink blending and the other one is using just alcohol markers and you just color it in. Now for our first card, I use the embossed side, which is the raised surface. For this card, for the blackout technique, I'm going to flip this panel around and then we are going to use the debossed side, the side that is etched inside. So this is what we are going to use. And I will stick to the same color palette. We'll have pinks and purples. The idea is to just show you two different varieties. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to color in the flower with pink, and then we will add some purple around the background for the blackout technique. So blackout technique, you don't necessarily have to use black ink. You could definitely use some beautiful colors. I would definitely recommend using darker color inks than lighter colors for the blackout. Okay, now let's get started with our ink blending. I will start again with carnation first, and we can take it from there. So this technique does not have to be perfect. So if you see there is a lot of pink on the outside, that's absolutely fine. That can be covered with the additional color that we add. So what I like to do is I like to pick up some color and then just start at the center and just go around. So this way. In the beginning, it will look really messy, but don't worry about it. We will fix that with our black. So, okay, there. Next, I will bring in my darker shade. And just add color around it. It's okay if your inking is a lot splotchy and it's not absolutely perfect. That's totally fine. We can fix that. There, I will at the end just bring in my bigger blending brush and add that pink throughout the center. There we go. Next, what I'm going to do is I will get a slightly darker shade, which is watermelon. And I will go ahead and add that to the very edges here. If you see, I'm definitely going outside of the line there. It's absolutely fine. We can fix that in the very end. Okay. I'll just make sure all of the parts have enough color. This is a technique that you can definitely use with your alcohol markers as well. Just color in that floral design with your alcohol markers. There. That's it. Let me know in the comments below if you guys have tried doing the blackout technique, and if so, do you like it? Because for me, I love this technique. All right, so that was our flower. Now let's add some greens to the leaf and to the stem. Again, I will go ahead and pick up my green blending brush and then some beautiful greens. So I have perfection, field perfection, and fine. So this is a trio of greens that I like to use whenever it comes to foliage. So I will start with perfection. I I'm using another blending brush. This is by Cat Scrappiness. They have these absolutely gorgeous mini ink blending brushes, and this one is the the firm bristle. And if you need like a softer bristle, you could use these ones. These are softer bristles. Okay. Now, when it comes to the leaves, let's start with the lightest shade first. Again, it's okay if you go outside of the line. Just fill in the color. That was color number 1, which is perfection. Then I will go to fields, which is 1 shade darker. Again, you'll see there's slightly imperfection there. I'm absolutely fine with that. And I will go ahead and just fill that in. I love those little splotches there because when we add the blackout ink, that looks absolutely stunning. And those splotches will be barely visible. Again, this is one of those fastest and easiest ways to create a card. Then let me bring in another ink blending brush for my pine, which again I just like to add at the base of each of these leaves. Okay. And one last, which is aging. Okay. So that's our panel. Now all we have to do is swipe a darker ink. So in our first panel, we took pinks and purples. Let's try adding purple here. If that does not work, we can go in for the black. So we used orchid and lilac, but that's a lighter shade of purple. So the darkest in this trio is amethyst. I think for me, this is also a lighter part of the purple when it comes to dragging the ink and creating that beautiful blackout technique. Let me see if I have any other shades of purple that I can use here. All right. So I think I'll stick to iris, which is more of that bluish purple. It's not completely purple. We'll start with amethyst and then I think I'll move on that. So let's see. So what you have to do is just hold your ink pad and just swipe it in one direction. Okay, I think this looks good. It can be splotchy. That's absolutely fine. That's how you get those textures there. But make sure you drag it just in one direction. You wouldn't want to turn it around if you want this texture, this particular texture. So all you have to do is make sure you hold the paper in place because the ink pad is really saturated. You don't want your, paper to lift or tear. There. There you go. Now what I'm going to do is just turn this panel around and I don't want any of that ink on my hands. So what I'm going to do is, let me see. find a sticky note. I'll just place this here, and then we can swipe it again. I'll do it very carefully. You can definitely use your black pads, black ink pads. Black pigment ink also works well with this technique. If your ink pad is really nice and juicy, you will get this result. If you do not add a lot of ink and a lot of pressure, this is what you get. So I also like that random texture there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add extra ink on this side. Let's cover that up. And then this side, I'm going to leave it as is because I really like that texture there. I'll just fill this gap. Yeah, you do get some ink on your hand, but that's fine. And well, that's pretty much it. So, well, I thought I would use this, but then I guess amethyst worked well too. Absolutely love how easy this technique is, and you end up creating a different look each single, like, every time you swipe your ink pad, it's a completely different look that you create. If you turn this panel around, this side looks messy, but then I absolutely love this one too. So you really don't see all that, splotchiness that happened here on the leaves. It's not very visible. Even the pink that we added, I had some splotches. I was not really careful with that. So this technique is a very forgiving technique, blackout technique. I absolutely love this. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a little bit of black. Okay. So let me grab a black ink pad. I'll just use this, or probably for this, I prefer something that is less juicy, an older ink pad. So let me see. Okay, let me just use this one. For this, I'm not going to press it down. Okay, I'll just very lightly add color, a little bit of that black. So you see there is a little bit of black here. That just gives it a beautiful dimension or a more shadow effect. Just make sure if you're using black on an other color, the black ink pad is not juicy. Now, I do have the Nocturne, I have the Altenews Obsidian Black, but these are newer ink pads, and this one I just recently refilled that, so it's a lot juicier than this one. This is an older ink pad which I generally don't use, so I just keep it for techniques like this. I'm not even sure from where I got that, so probably from Michael's. So very lightly, I'm just going to bring in that color. And again, I'm swiping in the same direction as I did with my amethyst. So I'm just getting a little bit of streaks of that black. So I absolutely love it. So it's almost like a shadow effect there. Okay. I will keep this aside and just clean my hand before bringing in a white card base. So doesn't that look absolutely gorgeous? Now for this one, instead of a stamped sentiment, I'll be using a sentiment strip. So I have, you could definitely stamp the sentiment and die cut it from the same happy birthday sentiment that we used for the card number one, but I am using one of these sentiment strips. Now this one is the happy birthday easy C strips. Let me see. So these are the easy strips. This is the reverse happy birthday, which is white printed on black, and I also had black printed on white. And I use the easy rectangle dies. Now this coordinates perfectly with this. So I was able to cut that white panel out, and I get a bunch of these die cut sentiments. So I can use any on my card. So it's as easy as it gets. So all I have to do is just cut this out. So for example, I can show you with this one. All you have to do is line this up and run it through your die cutting machine. Let me show you one, and then you'll get an idea of how it works. So just make sure it's properly aligned and you secure it in place. You don't want it to move when you're die cutting it. So there. If you visit the Simon website, you will see a bunch of these easy strips. Now here's another one that I have, which is the everyday easy strips. Now there are so many different messages here. You are the best, thank you, hello friend, happy birthday. So basically you have the everyday messages. This one is specifically for birthday, and also note that these are printed in uh, uh, toner ink, so you can foil them. You can use your foil machine to foil them. So that's a fun way to use it. So this one, what I like to do is add some washi tape and make sure that the die is held securely in place before running it through my die cutting machine. Okay, so here I have my plates. I'll just, like I did with the embossing folder, I'm not going to keep it straight. I'll just keep it like this, and then I'll run it through my die cutting machine. Okay, so there we go. All I have to do is just separate this out, and there you have a bunch of different sentiments ready to go. So you can use any sentiment from this to add on your card. So this is white on black. The same way I store my other sentiments in this one. So this is black on white. So I have all my sentiments stored in this pouch. So let's see which one looks better on this. I think I like this happy birthday. I will take this out and keep this guy aside, and then we will be adding our sentiment overlapping the focal point image. Now since we needed a flatter surface to stamp our sentiment on card number one, I stamped it right here in the center, but whenever I use a sentiment strip, I usually like to overlap it with my focal point image. So here the focal point is this big beautiful flower. So let's do that. Before that, we definitely need some sparkle. This one is absolutely dry. I absolutely love how this turned out. Isn't that super shiny? Looks beautiful. Okay, now for this one, again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to spritz it with the same shimmer. So I have almost used this There's barely anything left. I think it's definitely time to order another one. So, okay, let me just go ahead and add that sparkle there. And while that dries, let's just prep our card bases. So I have a top folding card base and a side folding card base. So depending on whatever you like using, I generally prefer the top folding, and you can use that. So I will be using foam tape to mount both these panels onto my card base. Now here's a look. Now this one was cut to 4 by 5¼ inches, so I get that beautiful white border around the edges. And I love using foam tape because that gives our panel a little bit of lift. So let me just go ahead and add some foam tape to this. Okay. How I like to hold this in place is I don't want this to move around, especially on my glass surface. So what I'm going to do is just take this and tape it on my glass mat. So that way I know it's not going to move. There. And then we can just peel off the backing. I think this is the most scariest part for me when it comes to card making, is just lining this up properly. So you could definitely leave this as is. It's a really very clean and simple card. And you could add a little bit of shine or shimmer on here. So let's see. So I have my contour iridescent. This is by Stamperia. These are little uh, contour lines. I'll show you how that looks. Okay. I've not used this in quite a while, so I'm hoping it works well. Okay. So there. It's almost like pearls, little pearls. This will stay wet for a while, so you have to make sure you let it dry completely before, you touch it. And this is almost like a pearl iridescent look. I have another one in gold. So this one is gold. I'll show that one also. Like I said, I haven't used this in quite a while, so I'm not sure. Okay, there. This one. And they're absolutely gorgeous. Another thing you could use is your Nuvo drops or stickles. I think those would be absolutely stunning. Okay, for this one, I will stick to the iridescent. I'll just use a little bit on scrap paper first. So anytime you use things like these, like even your Nuvo drops, I would always recommend doing a few test runs on scrap piece of paper than directly going on your card base. And I will add a little bit of this on. I'll be very careful and very gentle not to press it hard. If you feel there's any kind of resistance, just press it on your scrap piece of paper and make sure to see. If I were to, just press it there, all this would have come out. So I always have my paper handy. So I will press or squeeze the tiniest amount, just like that. Or you could definitely add some sequin mix as well. I wanted to do something different this time. And it's been quite some time that I've used these. So I felt this was the perfect occasion for that. So there you go. Totally love how that looks. So that was card number 1. I will keep this aside and make sure I don't touch my card or anything on that. Okay, now panel number 2 is also dry. I will first go ahead and add some foam tape to the back. Then we can pop it on our card base, and then we can add this little guy and our sentiment. So there we go. This one here is a side folding card base. So like I did with my first card, I will just hold this in place there, and then I can go ahead and remove the backing. I will stick this in place. That's what I was scared for. All right. There we go. First, I will go ahead and stick my happy birthday sentiment. I am not going to use any foam tape for this because we already have a lot of dimension there. So I am just going to use some liquid glue and stick this in place. While I do that, I will also bring in my T-square ruler just to make sure everything is perfectly aligned. You don't want a crooked sentiment. Okay. And then we will again add these little contour dots on this area. The first drop goes on my practice paper, and then we can just fill in those gaps there. Make sure not to add a lot of pressure. You don't want a lot of this oozing out. They're absolutely gorgeous. Now, before you do anything else, make sure to throw this thing out because this is still wet and you don't want it anywhere on your work surface. You don't want to accidentally touch this on your projects. So I will throw that out, and here's a look at both the cards we created today. So in less than an hour, we created 2 cards. Obviously, this is the mirror image because we use the deboss side, but 2 cards that are absolutely wonderful to mass produce, to techniques. The same thing, you can like use different color combinations. You could use just the black on this blackout technique, skip the purple. And these are cards that are absolutely perfect for mass production, for birthday cards, thank you cards, even sympathy cards. Now, this particular design, this clean and simple look, would be absolutely perfect for a sympathy card or a get well soon card also. Now, anyone who loves flowers, I think this embossing folder is again a beautiful embossing folder, a very minimal embossing design on this one. If you don't like those, overwhelming embossing which covers the entire panel, this I think is a very good beginner friendly card. So, oh, that's no problem, Lynn. So, thank you so much, and thank you so much for joining me today. I don't currently have links to all these right now. Once I'm done with the live, I will make sure I have links to all the products, the supplies, including these little guys, and even the blending brushes that I like to use. So I have these ones from Cat Scrappiness. I have the big and the smaller ones from Simon. I will be sure to link all those down in the description box below. And please know that all of those links will be affiliate links, which means like if you shop using one of my links, I'll get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Thank you again for joining me today. I will see you again next week with another live. And until then, make sure to follow me on my YouTube channel and on my Instagram. I'll have links to both those in my description box below. Also, I will be posting a few videos on my YouTube channel this week. We have a fun alter new video coming up tomorrow, so be sure to check that out also. Thank you so much for joining me today. Bye.